Let's have a conversation about what's been happening over the weekend. And this is so we talked about this new coalition that brings together NASA leaders minus Raila Odinga and brings in Gideon Moi. And this is Moses Wetangula, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, and Gideon Moi appearing to now campaign together and go together and saying we will walk together until 2022. And then there is the other NASA principal who's now been left without his coalition partners, Raila Odinga. And those guys who've walked out are saying, but you know, this man owes us. He should come and support us. He should be the one now who comes and picks one of us and says, I'm going to support you. I'm going to be behind you. Just the same way we all have done twice behind him. Well, apart from Musalia Mudavadi, who has done it once behind him. And Raila coming to say, what do you mean? Endorse people? Why? These people, first of all, when I was going for the swearing in at Uhuru Park, where were they? You didn't see any of them. They abandoned me. It was very clear that we parted ways a long time ago. Yesterday, the ODM Secretary General, Edwin Sifuna, released a statement, and I'm just going to read the intro to that statement. It says, it's becoming rather tasteless lately, having to consume the whining of the former NASA core principals in their greedy desire to have the Right Honorable Raila Odinga step down for them in the 2022 race after peddling the myth of an agreement to that effect until it lost taste. Like all of their sterile political narratives, they have now resorted to regurgitating it at funerals. They're now saying, oh, this is what we need. This, up until our unfortunate encounter with this Raila Niachia alliance, it used to be that people who sought the presidency went to seek the mandate from Kenyans, who in their wisdom settled for whoever they thought would be best. And we now have to contend with a band of pretenders to the throne who think that the presidency is a potato you can slice up in pieces and share out at a table. Basically, in his characteristic style, Edwin Sifuna now went into tearing into each of these leaders one by one. Musalia, remember the Rainbow Alliance. He walked out of Kanu, then he quickly ran back and he took up the vice presidency. Kalonzo, on the other hand, is the quintessential one-party rule man and a late entrant to the 2002 liberation movement. He only opted to join Raila in 2013 after his cunning attempt to exploit the ICC tribulations of Uhuru and Ruto fell flat. Then we talk, and he says about Wetangula, the less I say about Wetangula, the better. Wow. Contemptuous at best. We have Edwin Sifuna on the line. Edwin, good morning.
Good morning, Latif and Ndu and City.
Good morning, Edwin.
I actually have missed you guys. I don't know how that happened.
When you say actually have, I don't understand. Why did you say like that?
It's like you're surprised.
Why are you surprised?
I'm
a natural occurrence, I would think.
It usually doesn't happen.
You don't miss people.
I don't usually do. I have a special
so
liking.
This is a good thing.
Very good.
It is a good thing to do.
Also in the room with us is Jonathan Mueke, the former deputy governor of Nairobi. First deputy governor.
That's my friend. That's my friend. Salimia Hassan.
Hi, Edwin.
Hi, bro.
So, Edwin,
this
statement of yours, and you're calling them the Raila Niachia Alliance, and you're saying that Raila does not owe any of them anything.
Yes.
Don't you think you're just being rather unfair on the political reality of this country?
I think if we discuss political reality, you will see that there's nothing unfair there. Because one of the things that we want to make very clear is that we know that NASA agreement from front to end. I'm getting a lot of echo. Is that something you can fix?
It's on your side, I think.
Okay. So what I was saying is that we know the NASA agreement through and through because we participated in drafting it. Mm-hmm. So what I want to say is that there was a clause that required that in the event that Raila is required not to run, that NASA agreement has to be renewed at the end of the term of Parliament. So it can only be a discussion after the NASA agreement is renewed. So I don't understand why these guys are talking about something that has not happened. And the likelihood of that agreement being renewed is zero as we speak because of the conduct of our so-called co-partner.
Edwin, when you say conduct, what do you mean? Because as far as I can see, they are doing what politicians seem to do well.
No, if you separate the politics and just strictly talk about the agreement, City, because they are reaping benefits of the agreement. You will know that they are sitting on slots in Parliament, for instance. Senator Mutula Kilonzo is a minority whip courtesy of that agreement. But you have to be friends through thick and thin. I mean, it cannot just be when there are benefits, when you want money or when you want positions is when you remember there's a NASA agreement. But when the coalition actually needs you, like this issue of the swearing in, I don't know why they take it so lightly. Because it was something that was demanded by the coalition supporters. And all of us undertook to do it to satiate the anger of our supporters. Because we genuinely believe that our party leader had won the election. And it was a form of very serious protest to validate ourselves as Kenyans and to show the world that we are also here and we cannot be ignored. So for people to trivialize something that was very, very dear to our supporters is something that does not sit well with us. And the most unfortunate thing is that many of them were publicly, riling up other people's children to show up at that swearing in, and then they run away and hide on the day itself. And what is most upsetting is yesterday I had Kalonzo giving now an honest account of why he did not attend the swearing in, when he says that as senior counsel he cannot attend something that he considers illegal. But we have to go back to the explanation that he was giving during the period of swearing in. You remember when he was alleging that police had cordoned off his house, that his security had been arrested, Mara, the Nigerian number, you remember that story? I don't know if who knows this Nigerian.
Yeah.
So why was he lying to the public? Even Musalia has subsequently come out to say that he did not attend the swearing in because he did not believe in it. Yeah? We want people who are honest. You can come out, and when we were telling the public then that these gentlemen are lying about the reason why they didn't come to the swearing in, they were attacking us the same way they are attacking us. Huh?
So do you think that he owes them in terms of position? Do you believe that party leader Raila Odinga owes these gentlemen in terms of an endorsement?
I don't think they were supporting him so that he supports them in future, because the agreement was sharing the spoils of victory. Yeah? Even now, as we speak, I have given you an example. Wiper are already benefiting from the fact that they supported Raila. Number two, there's something that people forget. That support that they gave to the presidential candidate of ODM came at a very heavy cost to other candidates of ODM. For instance, Jonathan Mueke will tell you that when I ran for Senate in Nairobi, I had a Wiper opponent. And Kalonzo made it the habit to actually hammer me in my presence, at the presence of the coalition leaders in campaigns here in Nairobi. If you look at places like Western Kenya, in Kakamega, for instance, ODM lost a lot of parliamentary seats because, first of all, ANC and the Wiper and Fort Kenya refused to have joint nominations in the coalition. So what people would do, because ODM insists on conducting party primaries, they would run away into these partner parties, and those partner parties would not bother to even conduct nominations. They would just give direct tickets. So they were very attractive to our people who ran away and then were being given direct tickets, because many politicians will tell you they don't want to go through the party primaries first. They are very expensive. And then these candidates, all they would do, they would never sell their agenda. They would just say, okay, we have supported Raila for the presidency. ODM should now leave us this lower seat. And it was a very powerful narrative. So if you look at Matungu, for instance, how did ANC end up with it? It is because of those narratives. How did they end up getting more seats in Kakamega than ODM? It is because of those narratives. We would like to see a situation where ANC goes out without the backing or support of Raila Odinga and tries to win a seat. It is going to be very difficult. As we set out in the statement yesterday, even when Mudavadi ran against Raila in 2013, Mudavadi lost to Raila in Western Kenya. Wetangula, if you look at the votes that Wetangula received both in 2013 and 2017 for Senate, and compare with the votes that Raila received in Bungoma for presidency, Raila got more than Wetangula got for Senate. So you wonder who is bringing votes for who.
So Edwin, all of this talk of endorsement or not endorse, or this, so essentially what you're saying, it doesn't matter that whether his name Raila comes up or not, it really doesn't matter. These fellows can go ahead and do whatever it is that they want to do politically, with or without his name. Are you saying it doesn't matter?
That's what we are saying. You see, they're behaving like Lot's wife. Once you leave, please don't look back because you'll turn into a pillar of salt. They left us already. So why do they keep bringing us up? Or you break up with your spouse and all they do is to stand on the fence there threatening to leave. We have already broken up, surely. What is this that you want from us and yet you have abandoned the coalition? So all we are asking is this. Please go out to Kenyans and seek their support. It is actually possible for you to lose even with Raila's endorsement. If Raila endorses you and you have not canvassed your votes across the country to explain to the people what your agenda is, you can actually lose with that endorsement. And in ODM, we are saying if Raila is going to bless anyone as a father who wants to quote unquote call it a day, he has children in his house. You cannot go and bless other people's children across the fence when you have your children in the house. Honorable Joho, Honorable Oparanya, these have been faithful lieutenants. They have never left Raila's side. You yourself have pointed out. People like Musalia come and go at whim. In fact, Musalia has never supported Mudavadi when the presidency, when the current president is not seeking re-election. So whenever there is a fresh election for a fresh president, not a re-election, Mudavadi always runs away. Yeah. So we expect that he's going to do the same in 2022, but he doesn't need to drag us into those conversations. Let him leave Mululu for once, fly away from the nest. Let him go and look for boats in Turkana, in Narok and in other places instead of just rotating here in the village with his friends in Agoi and Adagala.
But at the same time, Edwin, as you say all these things, there's something that one could look at and see if this gentleman came together and they campaigned together, for example, in 2013, under CORD, there was Kalonzo, there was Moses Wetangula, and they came together under CORD and they said, I, as Kalonzo Musyoka, having run as president for the presidential seat before and having not succeeded, I'm now coming and I'm going to support a joint ticket between me and my brother Raila. Moses Wetangula would say, despite my political party maybe wanting me to front myself as a candidate, I am going to come and support the candidacy of Raila Odinga. Similarly, in 2017, don't you think now there's a point when someone would sit and wonder, why am I always the one who supports you? And it doesn't ever occur to you that you can also turn back and say, you know what, we have tried with me as the one in the lead and we haven't won it. Let's try with you in the lead. Don't you think there's ground for that? For at least Raila just saying, all right, we have tried it before, me and Kalonzo, can we now try with you, Wetangula?
No, but there's something that you are discounting, and I don't think it is fair for you to discount. The person who then becomes the presidential flag bearer, the potential president, has to have the capacity, he has to have the capability, he has to actually be the best of the crop. So you have to ask yourself, over the period of time that these friends of ours have supported us, how have they improved their lot, even in terms of supporting their home bases? Is it growing or is it dwindling? Is Kalonzo in a stronger position than he was in 2007, for instance? As Wetangula's fortunes improved in Western or Mudavadi's? That is what Stiti was telling you. That once a tree is old, you can't fashion it into a walking stick. So why are you trying to force it to become a walking stick? It will just remain an old tree. I think the only thing you can do is provide shade or places for birds. But you can't be a walking. And the second thing you must remember, I have told you, it's not as if these guys did not benefit from those agreements. So there is no debt because ni nipa ni kupe. You remember Wetangula, he became the minority leader
and then
in the Senate for a long time as the only senator from Fort Kenya. That was a benefit of the coalition. So you cannot say that there was no benefit. You will remember that at some point in the CORD coalition, ODM used to share its political party's fund with our partners. We used to pay them money. My friend, so what is this debt you're talking about?
The debt is not, directly that way. The debt is from the gentleman's point of view. Look, it paints a picture that Raila can only be supported. He cannot support. That this
But Raila,
as you come to join when they're forming the NASA coalition, why was Raila accepting? Why was ODM accepting the Amani National Congress, the Ford Kenya, and Wiper to come in? Is because they knew that these parties have numbers, and those numbers can take us to the top. So you look at it from that same angle.
Is it impossible to think about it like that, Edwin? That okay?
No, it's not impossible.
That
We
he
don't
could
dispute
actually
that.
support them.
We don't dispute it, but we are saying you need to understand that first of all, Raila is someone who has supported other people before. I don't know why you're forgetting Kibaki Tosha. He can do it. He has done it before.
Right.
So it's not as if he can support. Number two, we don't discount that they had numbers that helped to fill the basket. We are not saying that. We are just saying that in these negotiations, everything has been to be put on the table, and you have to come with clean hands. You don't come and lie to the public that we supported Raila all these years, we got nothing. Now it is time to support us. But also we must look at whether their capacity has grown over this period of time and their ability. And you see, there are things that Kenyans are looking for in their leaders. You're not going to force us to back someone who does not inspire us or inspire confidence that he's able to do the job, just given on their conduct. I have told you, for instance, it is the law in this country that if you are a leader, you cannot stand up and peddle falsehood. Yeah. So if somebody like Kalonzo, given the number of stories he has given Kenyans about the swearing in, is that somebody who can be trusted with high office?
Edwin, let me ask this question because it is something that I have heard mostly from Raila Odinga's backyard, that
Yes.
the current partnership that they have with Uhuru Kenyatta is a partnership that is bound to break around the time when we're actually gearing up towards the elections.
Yeah.
I would like to know your thoughts on this particular matter.
City, I think you have observed politics longer than me. Nothing is impossible in politics. Again, ODM has experience with the betrayal. The only difference with us is we don't cry about it. Ukichengwa unakubali and you move on with life. So for us, we know that everything is possible. In politics, we have seen betrayal before. What we do is that for us, we keep our side of the agreement. We have basically done what was agreed to be done in terms of pushing the agenda of the BBI, because we believed in that agenda. That agenda is an ODM agenda. If we look back as a party, we're actually very proud that we convinced the Jubilee Party leader to accept that corruption is a problem in this country, that ethnicity is a problem in this country, and to actually put pen to paper to those issues is a big victory for us as ODM. Because if you recall previously, when we used to talk about these issues, the president used to say, hiyo ni kelele ya opposition. When we used to talk about NYS, about Eurobond, and so on and so forth, he used to say, yeah, these are just noisemakers who are out to derail the agenda. But for the president to put pen to paper and to actually call the country to have a conversation about these things is something that we consider a plus. If you look at those 9 agendas, that is the ODM agenda, strengthening devolution, all these other things. And you can see good things are coming out of it. If we as a party can count increase of the resources that are going to the devolved units out of this BBI process, I think it is a victory that we are willing to take even in the face of other hurdles that can be thrown in our way.
Edwin, you're a lawyer.
Yes.
Now, there's also been talk about the matters that are raised in the BBI as being besides the point in this respect, that many of the issues that the BBI brings about already exist within our laws, and all that requires that little nudge for them to be implemented. What is your view?
My view is that the experience with human beings is what requires us to tighten the screw from a legal perspective. We have realized that we have a very good document, but if you leave any wiggle room that requires goodwill or benevolence from the person in power, the experience is that they will choose evil all the time. So I don't think there is anything wrong, City, by just tightening the screw and tying the hands of those in leadership to do what Kenyans want done.
But Edwin,
So
again,
that's
just
nudge. That's nudge. We are not going. For instance, we have had a long debate about the issue of appointment of judges. It is something that does not sit well with me as a lawyer who understands that the president's role here is essentially ceremonial. So, but you can make noise from the top of the rooftops if you don't have legal instruments to actually make the president do what the constitution is requires of him, then you are just making noise.
There is a legal instrument, one clear one called impeachment. If there is gross violation of the Constitution, if
I'm
you as a
telling you.
lawyer have said that it's there in
Yeah.
Constitution that the president is required to appoint and is not appointing, ODM, sponsor impeachment. Get the man out.
So that is a good argument, Latif. And what you need to do is to separate when I'm talking as a lawyer and when I'm talking as a politician, because you yourself you yourself spoke of political reality. What is the political reality in this country today? We in ODM were extremely frustrated, especially during the first term of Jubilee, when we had the so-called tyranny of numbers, and we were hoping that these guys would use that tyranny for good, to pass some laws that would actually help the country, but it didn't happen. The political reality at the time is that the president could do no wrong. You remember during that term, there were all these court orders that he had disobeyed, flagrant, breaches of the constitution and so on and so forth. But the impeachment tool was neutered in that parliament as a tool of executive oversight. When these members of parliament forgot that they were independent arm, and started thinking of themselves as part of the executive simply because they were elected on the same party as the president. Even now, the political reality does not support a move to impeach the president or even his deputy. So we have to live within those, two
realities.
lines, what is law and what is the political reality.
Yeah, Edwin, now, again, as a lawyer, you're saying a lawyer and a politician. It seems like you're talking from both sides of your mouth. But just a
Because
question for you
mouth.
on BBI,
I
my
actually
friend.
have 2 mouths.
You see, Edwin, my thing is about the principle of it all and the intent.
Yes.
Right now, we have a constitution that our current administration has been breaking. Look at what they did in Nairobi by appointing a governor against Article 38 of the Constitution, against Article 182 of the Constitution, against Article 3 of the Constitution. Yeah, so the current constitution is being broken left, right, and center. Failure to appoint judges, failure to dissolve parliament. I mean, that's our constitution just being multi-layered. Now we have BBI that is coming as an amendment to our constitution. So all these nice things that we are saying are in BBI, we can go to the polls, we can pass them, but as soon as they become part of the constitution, we just refuse to do them. The same guys who are refusing to follow our constitution now will just say, you know what, we have woken up today and we feel like the counties are going to get 10%. So you're 35% kwendeni yuko hatuna pesa.
Kuna pesa.
And there's nothing we'll do because they are doing it now. And it's the same people. That's one. My second thing is, if we are so clear on the principle of this BBI, right now, because some of these things that are in BBI can really help the country, 35% going to the counties. So nothing stops the president from giving the counties 35%. The handshake team has numbers in parliament. The budget is being drawn now. Why don't we just go and say the counties are going to get 550 million shillings in the next budget, even before the referendum? Nothing stops you from doing that. You don't need to go to a referendum. Why don't you guys go sponsor bills right now to give tax breaks to new companies for 7 years? You can do that this afternoon. You don't have to wait for BBI. I mean, these are such urgent things that Kenyans need. There's a lot of guys who can't pay help right now because they're unemployed. In BBI, you say you'll give them 4 years. Why don't you guys go tomorrow? It's Tuesday. Just go to parliament tomorrow, and by Wednesday, the youth can get these opportunities. Why are we, if the principle is there and the goodwill is there, why are we waiting to go to an election to give Kenyans something that you can give them now?
Okay, let me start with the second one, because you must understand that the BBI document is not just the constitutional amendment bill. If you read the entire production, there is the part where they propose some policy interventions for government to do immediately. Yep. And then there is about 14 bills to amend the various pieces of legislation to bring into effect some of the things like you're talking about. Help is not something that is going into the constitution. The tax breaks that you're talking about is probably just an amendment to the Finance Act.
Absolutely.
So there are those bills. those bills have already been drafted. And I am sure that in the next few months or so, you will see them before Parliament. So the referendum issues are the ones that have been set out under Article 255, that if you touch any of these places, for instance, the Bill of Rights, we are introducing something to do with data protection. If you touch the Bill of Rights, you have to go for a referendum. If you touch the functions of Parliament, like now you're introducing a prime minister in the Houses of Parliament, or that now members of Parliament can also be appointed as members of the executive. If you change the functions of Parliament, Article 255 requires you to go to a referendum. If you change the objects and structure of devolution, including this issue of how revenue is shared between the two levels of government, you have to go to a referendum. So you have to separate those issues, and I agree with him that Kenyans would like to see some quick fixes to some of the problems, but that is not to say we don't need the referendum. On the first question that he asked, I want to propose to you that although I will get some pushback from my three friends there,
You are anticipating a pushback.
I know you guys. Politicians are not the same. This is something that I try to convince people on. Of course, they like to paint us with one brush, but politicians are not the same.
Okay.
As you said yourself in the introduction, the leopard does not change its spots. We know the characters of these people. We have observed them over time. So the mistake that was made in 2013 was to elect people who did not believe in the principles of this constitution, that we really were trying to break away from an imperial presidency that determined who becomes judge and who becomes the executor and so on and so forth. That we actually wanted to move away from this principle of all the money being retained in Nairobi, and then regional leaders must grovel and adore the supreme leader for them to get money to come to their areas, and that we can actually remove all this money and give the counties their money. They simply did not believe in these principles. So the danger here is that we are seeing a coalescing of two groups, Latif. Number one, they are the Kanu orphans. These are the people who will never change. I am telling you the truth. They are dyed-in-wool, one-party rule men like Kalonzo. If you end up with Kalonzo in presidency, you can be reassured that the things that we are seeing now in terms of even ignoring the constitution, he calls himself a senior counsel, but I am sure that his Kanuness trumps his senior counsel. So I am telling you, these politicians are not the same.
So how does that answer Jonathan's question then? How do we guarantee that?
He was asking is how do we guarantee that the people we elect are going to uphold fidelity to the law? You look at the people's character and don't tell us that we are the same. We are not the same. You can see pro-reform groupings of people who have actually fought for change in this country, people like Raila, people like Muhisa, people like Kibwana, people like Orengo on one side. And then we have the dyed-in-wool Kanu children, like Gideon Moi, you have Kalonzo there, you have Wetangula, and then you have Mudavadi. If you give any of those guys the opportunity to lead the country, you cannot come then and cry and say they don't believe in this thing.
Edwin, it sounds to me like this is what you call political sloganeering. I mean, we all know that they were in KANU for the longest time. We also know the Right Honorable Raila was also in KANU. Now,
how long?
It was a very short time. My memory fails me as to the length of time. But the point I'm trying to make here.
If we send you to All Saints Cathedral for 2 weeks, will you come out as a provost?
It's very unlikely that I will even come out as a member of the church.
But if he's baptized, within those 2 weeks, if he's baptized and he becomes now the spokesperson of that particular organization, then clearly somebody who was a secretary general and spokesperson of KANU is a KANU member.
For 2 weeks.
It doesn't matter. For 2 weeks.
Edwin, there's a larger point here. And the point is, when you say politicians are different, not really. The self-preservation, which sometimes presents itself as self-interest, which sometimes presents itself and is voiced as representing the will of the people, is something all politicians do. And I say all, I mean all do. Now, judging them by what they've done, yes, now that is now introducing a variable that one should actually look at, but which unfortunately we don't always do. Now, If I were to look at the situation that we currently have, I have to ask this question. What does the ODM party think that they have in stock that would be different from what every other candidate has?
Yeah, that is a good question. That is why I'm insisting on looking at the character of the people who are, presenting themselves for president over a long period of time. City, you do not become somebody who Kenyans look up to and believe in overnight.
No, you don't.
They will observe your conduct, how you stand in terms of difficulty, where you stand on issues of controversy over a period of 30 years. So after that period of time, people come to develop some confidence in your ability to tackle problems as they arise, and they can predict with some level of,
Certainty,
accuracy,
yes.
how you will behave in certain circumstances. So I can tell you that the person of Raila Odinga, for instance, people know what he is about. So that even if there is some self-interest of some preservations, he has been known to tamper that with national interest over a period of time. There are some of these people who we know, if they are given opportunity, my friend, it will be personal interest throughout.
Edwin, just because we are looking at alternatives to BBI, our country right now is facing some very, very serious crisis. Our economy is completely on its knees. We are unable to pay debt, and we are asking for very, very expensive rescheduling of debt. Children in school are learning under trees because of social distancing, and we don't have enough classrooms. And then we have COVID-19 that has many people in hospital every day, and others dying every single day. So we are very financially strained as a country. Now, if I was president, I'd look at all the resources we have as a country and figure out what the priorities are. And since we've established with you here that there's a lot in BBI that is good, that doesn't need a constitutional change, all you need to do is legislate and do policy. And by the way, looking at my notes, I've seen the president has already started implementing some of the stuff in BBI without spending a shilling. For example, renaming Boxing Day to Tamaduni Day was in BBI. The president did that. Putting in NIS in the ministries to break cartels for corruption was in BBI. The president already implemented that. So these are things that can be implemented with a stroke of a pen without costing a shilling. So why are we spending 2 million shillings bribing MCAs, that's 4.5 billion shillings, and taking BBI to the counties while you can pay that money to do some economic stimulus to businesses, especially in the tourism sector, hospitality sector, that can create jobs for our young people? Why are we going to go into a very expensive referendum now when we can't even pay our debt and our economy is on its knees? Why don't we just prioritize it and say, listen, we'll do the 90% of BBI that doesn't need a very expensive constitutional change process. And then when we are back to our feet as a country, we can do the other 10% of BBI that needs the constitutional amendment. And that way you're able to take care of the problems that the country is having now. So I'm just talking about, is this the right time for BBI, or do we have other priorities as a country?
Well, first of all, I know that you as the opponents of the BBI are finding it difficult to actually find things that are negative in the proposals that have been put forward by Kenyans themselves.
I'll tell you
So
two.
have to look for
I'll tell you
just a
two.
minute.
Hold on, Edwin, just before you go on, I'll tell
Let
you
me
two.
finish.
Number one,
Let me finish.
Okay,
You are
withdraw
going
that
to
one.
distort my...
I'll tell you two negatives,
right.
but anyway, they're there. So go ahead, Edwin.
Latif, you know the opening statements are my favorite. Those are really... So
We're
what I'm
listening,
saying
bro.
is, what I'm saying is that you have now to go and look for an emotional argument, which makes sense. But then the question becomes, where is it that it is said that BBI is the number one government priority? It is this narrative that you guys are...
The president has said it, my
somehow.
friend.
Just a minute. It is you guys advancing the argument that somehow BBI is the number one priority over fixing the economy or dealing with COVID and so on and so forth. You are forgetting that government has to do its job. It is doing its job. I will give you a very simple example. On the day when the PPA signatures were being taken to the IEBC, the president was in the coast. He was launching the walking bridge. What is it called? The floating bridge.
Floating bridge.
Yes. And I saw him also launching a vehicle assembly plant on the same day. Latif, I would ask, how many doctors did we take from Kenyatta National Hospital to go and help us collect signatures? We didn't take anyone from government departments to go and help us with BBI. What we are saying is this country can walk and chew gum at the same time. And this narrative that somehow BBI is the top priority for government is something that has been peddled. I have heard it mostly from the deputy president, that he comes and says, that we were on course with our Big Four agenda, but now these guys have come with stories here, and it has derailed our agenda. So if you look at the Big Four, it talks about affordable housing, agriculture, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. So Latif, if you have cleared a field, you have poured concrete, you are building affordable houses, will the concrete not dry because there's a conversation at Bomas? You know, these are the questions we're asking ourselves and wondering, what are these people talking
You know why
about?
I'm not responding is because
Number two,
Jonathan was actually very clear with the examples, and he said, look,
yeah.
if we talk about prioritization of where we need to spend our money, not on the things that have already been started, where we need to be spending our money, 2 billion shillings. How much is it going to cost us to run a referendum this year? It's going to be around 14 billion shillings, not counting how much money has been spent popularizing BBI. How much money is going to be spent? So let's even talk about 20 billion shillings. Is this the best way we could spend 20 billion shillings this year?
This is what I'm coming to, Latif. Because there is something I like to say that people don't like to hear. There is something in this country called manufactured outrage. It is not genuine outrage. Because really, if you are outraged that we are going to spend 2 billion shillings on the referendum, and your commander-in-chief has told you that you lose 2 billion every day to thieves in his government, where should your outrage be directed?
On him focusing on fixing that 2 billion shillings?
No. This is what we are saying. It is manufactured outrage because you cannot find holes to punch in the BBI proposals. You are going for emotional arguments. The truth of the matter is, reform is expensive. Even in 2010, there were similar arguments saying, this thing is going to result in a very expensive constitution. Now, the same people who are saying it is going to be expensive to run the country are here telling us the same stories, even after they celebrated the passing of the constitution as the most progressive. So reform is expensive, yes, but our outrage should be directed to things that actually require that outrage. You imagine...
Such as what, Edwin?
Such as the theft in government. I have just given you an example. Imagine that the allocation for
we are
Lamu
so
County,
outrageous that when we see some more money being stolen in the name of giving MCA some BBI money, we are still outrageous. It's the same.
That's what I'm asking, Latif. Somebody comes and steals your cow, but you hold your outrage until he now comes back to steal the cows.
So Edwin, just as a citizen and as my friend, if you are in charge and you have a choice to make, either we pay our doctors what they need in the wake of a global pandemic that's killing our people every day, or we buy MCA's cars. Which one will you pick? Because your party leader said, we don't have money to pay doctors. Then your same party leader says, please give MCAs 2 million shillings each to buy a car. Which one would you pick? Would you buy an MCA a car and the MCA already has a car, or would you pay the doctor to save your people from dying every day?
My brother, even in your emotional arguments, please be fair and honest. Number one, the party leader never said there's no money to pay doctors.
He
what
did.
The party leader said, no, my friend. Sasa you want to be an authority over ODM matters and I'm the SP. Wacha nikuambie ile kitu baba alisema.
What did he say?
Baba alisema madaktari should consider that given the pandemic, it is not the best time for them to down their tools. That is not the equivalent of saying that we don't have money to pay you. That's not what he said. He just said that
the deputy party leader, your deputy party leader, who is a chairman, who was the chairman of the COG. Just listen to me, Edwin.
Yes.
Your deputy party leader,
Yes.
who was the chairman of the Council of Governors, said there is
Yes.
no money to pay these doctors.
And went on to say that even in 100 years, if they made that demand, there would still be no money to pay them.
So you have to provide the context for what Oparanya said, because there was an agreement that was signed between, I think, the nurses union and the government, and yet they expected the county governments to pay without providing the money for that agreement. That's what Oparanya was saying. Because everything that is devolved, you devolve functions and you devolve the resources. If you go and sign an agreement with the nurses union and say, okay, you are going to increase their pay, and then the people who are expected to pay are not on that, you have not given
It
them
was
the
the
resources.
clinical officers, yes.
Yeah,
but Edwin, Edwin, my point is, we're in the biggest health crisis this world has seen in 100 years. Countries around the world are redoing their budgets. They are moving things from whatever they had budgeted. They are stopping to build houses and manufacturing plants to put it in healthcare. And us in Kenya, we are taking money away from healthcare to change the constitution,
run a campaign.
to create positions for prime minister and deputy prime ministers. I'm just wondering I'm really wondering about the wisdom of that.
Again, my brother, you are misleading the country. I think we were all alive when these interventions for COVID were brought before Parliament, amendments to the Finance Act, amendments to various other legislations that resulted in even lowering of the tax, being charged on people in employment. We saw money being provided to fight COVID, to provide PPEs for our workers, to provide isolation hospitals and wards in the counties. I mean, Mueke, you can also be honest and just say that really there has been an effort towards containment of COVID, but that in fact every country is failing this challenge, and I don't think there is any country
All those
that has
have been
100%
reversed.
managed to.
All those measures that you've just mentioned have been
Yeah,
reversed. In fact,
let's
over
not
this
pretend
weekend,
as if-
the
let's not
president
pretend as if,
the president
that
acknowledged
was a
that the
vote
greatest
for
need the
sustaining.
youth have now is for the Kazim Tani to be brought back.
Now, you see, I don't speak for the president. I am not in government. I am just giving you a perspective that, in fact, when we have these discussions, let us be honest, that, in fact, there are things that have been done, although they have not been done to satisfaction. It's not as if we got 10 billion shillings here, and we said, this is specific money we want to use for the doctors, and then we said, let the doctors wait. We are taking this money to go collect signatures. That has not happened, and that's the picture that you guys are trying to paint.
It amounts to the same, Edwin, because if you look at it this way...
No, it doesn't.
If you look at it this way, the reason why all those tax breaks were reversed last month was because the government needed to collect more money. One of the reasons why Kazim Mtaani came to an end, the money that was going to support the Inua Jamii, part of the money that was going to support the elderly and the vulnerable families also came to an end. The tax breaks for people earning 24,000 and above and below, that one was retained, but the other tax breaks also, income tax and all, those came to an end.
VAT.
So as we are doing all those things and raising the VAT back to 16%, then we are going into spending that money that we have now said, okay, you people, this is the money that we're coming to help you. It was like a social protection program. That money, if you see some similar amount of money being spent on a political campaign, don't you ask yourself, so what do you mean? Are you saying that the youth no longer need Kazim Tani? Are you saying that the elderly no longer and the vulnerable families no longer need money? Are you saying that industries don't need to be supported with a VAT reduction?
I think, Latif, as I said, I don't speak for government, but there was a thinking that went into those interventions. I believe many of them were brought on board during lockdown. And with the easing of those restrictions, the thinking in government is that we could revert back to quote-unquote normalcy. Yeah, so probably that is the explanation why those interventions were reversed. But the question that I'm asking is, why are you people insisting that there is money that is being spent on BBI that was meant for other things? Where is the proof in that? In fact, when you say BBI campaigns, which are these BBI campaigns?
I
that you're
don't
talking
think,
about?
Edwin, I don't think it's that was meant for other things. It's that it can be used for
Correct.
other things. I think we have to look at it like that. Not that it was set aside, but we're looking at many situations that can be salvaged with what is currently available that can be used for those things, that is not being diverted, that is not being used for
Okay,
such
so
things.
do any of you in studio there have a figure of the amount of money that is being used for the so-called BBI campaign?
It would be
Where?
great
Yes,
to
2
know,
million
actually.
shillings per MCA.
Where?
At least.
Where?
That's 4.5 billion shillings.
By the way,
yeah.
Edwin,
Let's talk about
Edwin,
that,
this is not an
just
argument where I think the figures would help, because the reality is not even what we're saying here in my mind, is the optics. If we say the country...
I understand the emotional arguments. I
Yes,
have no
now I'm
problem.
talking about the optics, because why am I saying politics is as much a game of reality as it's a game of the imagination and a game of perspectives. I mean, if you present something in a way that people consider acceptable, look at the bad press, for instance, your party leader has received in the Mount Kenya region over the years. It has taken hold. It becomes very, very difficult to sell him, because the very same people who sold him as a bad option now want to say he is a good option. All I'm saying is we cannot understate the importance of perceptions in these matters. The perception
perception.
is that we don't have money, and yet there is money that is being found for things that are not even urgent. That is the perception that we're talking about.
Perception is something that can be formed, and I am trying to plead with you to help us form a different perception. But you have insisted on the perception that you like.
No, actually, it isn't insisting. I'm just stating the fact that it's a question of perceptions. And just like I wish you had stuck with that argument of you don't speak for the government, up to that point, you are doing really well. And then you then decide to become a government apologist. So we have to treat you like a member, a part of the government.
No, I am not a government apologist. I am giving you my view as I see it. And
Edwin.
I have explained to you that perhaps some of these interventions were being put in place because of lockdown, and with the continued easing of those restrictions, the thinking in government is that we can reverse some of those interventions. If it was an ODM government, I can guarantee you things would be done a bit different.